ChatGPT Plus is free for college students through May. Here's the thing. You've got a lot to do between now and then. Studying for finals, writing papers, trying to keep your life on track, and ChatGPT can help with all of it. It can quiz you for your econ exam, make a study guide from your French notes, plan out your meals and study breaks. It can get really specific on how you like to learn. It can even help you come up with ways to stop procrastinating. So from now until summer break, take advantage of all the ways ChatGPT can make your life easier. Restrictions apply.
Ladies, you'll end up shopping for your guy's deodorant, right? So try Degree's Original Cool Rush. You see, last year, Degree changed the formula, and men were mad. One guy even started a petition. So Degree admitted they messed up and brought the Original Cool Rush scent back. It's clean, crisp, and actually smells like someone you want to cuddle. And it's in Walmart, Target, and other stores now for under $4. So toss one in your cart and find out why it's the best-selling men's antiperspirant for the last decade. Degree Cool Rush is back, and it smells like victory.
Welcome to Farm Here Daily, a Field Forward podcast. I'm David Geiger, your host. I've been on Iowa TV and radio for the last decade and excited to join you on this podcast, Farm Here Daily. Today I'll have a conversation with Mariah Busta, Executive Director of the Iowa State Dairy Association, covering the state of Iowa's producers. Also, planting is nearly done in northern Iowa. We'll chat with ISU Extension agronomist Angie Rieck-Hinz about what she's seeing in the fields. Please be sure to like and follow the podcast and our social media channels at Field Forward Pod. We would love to have you join our community, keeping folks in Iowa informed about what is affecting our farmers, all here on Farm Here Daily. And joining us on Farm Here Daily, we have Northern Iowa agronomist Angie Rieck-Hinz with Iowa State University Extension and Outreach. Angie, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today. And let's take a look at Northern Iowa. What are you seeing in the fields today?
Well, I think most people are trying to wrap up planting, right? We had a really good run that earlier planting date in April, and then we were out of the field for about 2.5 weeks. A lot of people were able to get in starting last week, Monday or Tuesday, just depending on where you were. And even then there were a couple of places where it was still a little wet from some excess rain. And there was a lot of stuff going on yesterday when I was out and about field cultivating. There was lots of people planting, some people already with corn up staging anhydrous tanks to do some side dressing of an application. So lots of different things going on. Most folks I've talked to say they'll probably wrap up planting today or tomorrow.
We had that Iowa Crop Progress Report released on Monday, and it was saying that there's pretty good planting progress. So you're saying they're mostly done in northern Iowa as well?
Right. When we look at that crop planting progress report, we were at 81% of the corn planted and 56% of the soybeans planted. That when you look at the statewide average, we're way ahead of the 5-year average and even last year's average for corn planting and, for that matter, soybeans as well. So we made a lot of progress this last week. I wasn't around last week to see it, but I can tell, right, driving around, that there was a lot of progress made. So conditions this last week, right, we've warmed up a lot. We've dried out significantly. There's a few people I saw yesterday that are still waiting for a few of those pothole areas to dry out. So they're just, they've worked the entire field except those wetter areas. And I would say maybe by today or tomorrow, they'll be able to finish that and probably wrap up their planting. So things look good. The corn that's up, we have V2 and V3 corn. We have some VE soybeans up. And things so far look really good, right? I mean, corn always looks a little rocky this time of year. It's still kind of got that yellowish cast to us, but with this heat and the rapid growth we're experiencing, that will change very quickly.
I was going to ask you a little bit about that emergence. Have you had any issues with that in terms of crusting in northern Iowa?
Yeah, there's a lot of people talking about crusting. They're in that particular area, like north of Highway 175 and south of Highway 20, that week after Easter, they got over 5 inches of rain, and some of that rain, especially that Thursday night rain that week, which was like April 24th, that was a pretty hard pounding rain. So there's a lot of soil crusting. There's people making replant decisions. Some people have already replanted cornfields And other people are trying to wrap up some bean planting before they think about whether they want to replant a few acres in those crusted soils. In some cases, we had enough erosion, right, where we literally washed out furrows, and we moved corn seed and maybe even some soybean seed from that earlier planted stuff. So I suspect people will probably try and if they haven't already, go in and replant some of those areas that got washed out from those pounding rains.
As we move ahead into growing more so, have we noted any pest pressures in northern Iowa to be aware of?
I would say not yet, but now is the time we really need to be looking. Iowa State University has a moth trapping network, and we have certainly caught a significant amount of black cutworm moths this year, and a significant amount of true armyworm moths. Probably, I can't speak statewide, but I have traps near Story City. I have traps near Jewel, or north of Jewel. And I've caught more moths this year than I've ever caught before at those locations. Now, those are migratory pests, so we remember they fly in from the south or are blown up here on those southerly winds. We started trapping about the second week of April. Just because we get moths doesn't always mean we get a cutworm problem or a true armyworm problem. Because there's a lot of things that could happen, right? The moths come, they mate, they lay eggs, the eggs hatch into larvae, predators eat them, they die if it's cold, those kinds of things. So, but now is the time to be scouting, especially if you have really weedy fields, right? Those moths are attracted to green, grassy growing things. So if your burn down was delayed and it was weedy, along grassed waterways or fence edges, anything that had maybe a cover crop, cereal rye cover crop on it that overwintered, highly attracted to those moths. So I would go out and start scouting. The predicted cutting date, at least in north central Iowa, for cutworms is the end of this week. So this weekend, so like May 18th. But with our warmer temperatures this last week, I think I'd maybe start scouting just a tad bit earlier, just because insects develop based on that heat too. And I think it's important, if you've had those problems in the past, or especially if you've had a cereal rye cover crop out there, that you get out and look. Cutworms, we don't tend to find them during the day, right? They burrow under that soil, and they tend to cut plants right at that soil level. So the likelihood of finding them during the daylight hours is pretty small. But if you see cut plants or plants as they're unwrapping leaves or shooting out new leaves that have that shot holing, it's probably a cutworm. True armyworms tend to chew on leaves, so their feeding pattern is a little bit different. They don't necessarily prefer soybeans, but they will chew on soybeans until they can get to that grass or that corn. So now's a great time to be scouting for that. I suspect somewhere we will probably have an issue. We seem to have an issue with true armyworms every spring somewhere in Iowa.
We do have Angie Rieck-Hinz joining us on Farm Here Daily. She's the North Iowa ISU Extension agronomist. And Angie, I wanted to talk about alfalfa. Last year we had some problems with pest pressure there as well. Have you seen any of that starting this year?
Last year in parts of Iowa, we had alfalfa weevil, right? Some significant damage from alfalfa weevil. We had a lot of that in southeast Iowa last year, not so much in northern Iowa. But we have also been scouting for alfalfa weevils. So I can tell you, in the field that I scout every couple of days, that alfalfa is about 24 inches tall this week. And this was the first week that I found alfalfa weevils. So I found both the adult or the weevil itself, and the larvae. And the larvae were various sizes, right? So different instars of larvae. The larvae do the most damage, right? They skeletonize those leaves. If it's very severe, it sort of looks like that alfalfa is frosted because they've eaten that leaf tissue or scraped off that leaf tissue, and it looks like it's frosted. Normally, we don't think about treating for that insect unless it's really severe. But and we manage that insect pressure by taking our first cutting of alfalfa. Now we've already got some alfalfa down across Iowa, and I suspect as people get into next week, we'll have more alfalfa cut. But it's pretty easy to go out and scout that with a sweep net and check your sweep net to see what you have in it. And if you have questions about at what threshold, if you need to treat those alfalfa fields, give one of your extension field agronomists a call, and we'll walk you through that chart. Treatment is based on not only the number of larvae you have, but hay price, or the value of hay, and the treatment cost. So it's a little bit of a complicated table, but we have access to that. And if you need access to that, feel free to give us any one of us a call.
Speaking of getting calls, have you fielded any other farmer concerns or things to look at for this year?
I think so far most of my calls have been I'm still answering some soil fertility questions, right? People who did some spring soil sampling are looking at some fertility results. I've had a couple of phone calls about off-target herbicide movement already. It's been a windy spring, and I would just remind our applicators, right, that we need to be conscious of what's around us so we're not impacting people's backyards, their trees, their shrubs, their flowers, their gardens. I know it's windy, but we have to be a little bit more serious when we think about applying pesticides in that particular case. So I've had a few of those questions. Mostly this week, the crusting questions, right? Whether we need to replant, and then the usual questions we get. I should also say, a lot of pasture questions, like weed control in pastures. So we're currently, our forage specialists and one of our weed people are currently developing a guide on pasture weed control that we'll probably have out by the end of this week or first part of next week. So,
Angie Rieck-Hinz, ISU Extension agronomist for Northern Iowa, joining us. One more time, can you make mention of the website folks can go to seek resources on some of the stuff we've talked about today?
Yeah, I think we're really lucky in Iowa, at least in our extension perspective, is we put almost all of our crop information on the integrated crop management webpage. So if you Google integrated crop management at Iowa State University, you should come up to our integrated crop management webpage. If you really want the address, it's crops.extension.iastate.edu. But if you just Google integrated crop management, you will find we post a weekly blog from the extension field agronomist on what we're seeing and what we're hearing. So that's a great resource to keep up on with what's happening locally in your area. And then we put our pest management updates up there, what we're seeing. We write blog articles and news articles on weed control, other things as we go through the season. So that page is pretty much updated, and new materials pretty much added weekly this time of year as we go through the crop growing season.
Angie Rieck-Hinz, thank you so much for joining us on Farm Here Daily.
Thanks, David.
This episode is brought to you by Netflix. 3 couples, 4 vacations, a lot to unpack. Watch The 4 Seasons, a new series starring comedy favorites Tina Fey, Steve Carell, Will Forte, Coleman Domingo, and more in a hilarious and heartfelt love letter to long-term relationships. Based on the original Alan Alda film. Watch The 4 Seasons, streaming now only on Netflix.
You are listening to the Farm Here Daily podcast, and we're going to take a look at the Wednesday market close before we move on to our next conversation. And it was a mixed trade at the end of Wednesday's trading session. May corn up 2.5 cents, 438.5, with July rising 3 cents, 445.5. Soybeans in May down 1/4 cent at 10.67, with July rising 5 1/4, 10.77 3/4. Soybean meal in May down $0.50 a ton at $285.40. May wheat up 7 1/4 cents at 5.08 3/4, with July rising 7.5 at 5.24 3/4. In livestock market close for Wednesday, some negative trade there. June live cattle down $2.37 a hundredweight, $213.95. August falling $2.25 at $209.37. Feeder cattle in May, $3.25 a hundredweight down at $299.57, with August falling $4.02 at $301.97. Lean hogs in May up 2 cents a hundredweight at $91 even, with June falling 65 cents at $98.85. That is the Wednesday market close. This is the Farm Here Daily podcast.
Impact confirmed. The Slayer has been activated.
Demonic threat level increasing.
Hold the line!
All the power of hell cowering before one man.
id Software presents Doom, The Dark Ages. Available now on Xbox Series X and S, PlayStation 5, and PC.
Rated M for mature.
And we have joining with us Mariah Busta, Executive Director of the Iowa State Dairy Association. Mariah, thank you so much for joining us to talk about some of the dairy issues going on in Iowa. And speaking of, what is the latest topics in the state?
Yeah, well, excited to be here today and talk about dairy, especially as we are just a few weeks away from June Dairy Month. So we have an entire month to celebrate us next month. But just excited to talk more. Some of the things that are going on in here in Iowa is we're holding steady with our numbers. We are slightly increasing in the number of cows year over year. So excited to have that little bit of growth happening here in Iowa. It's bumped us up to be number 11 in milk production. And we're just so close to breaking into that top 10. So I'm excited to hopefully in a year from today, come back and say, hey, we made it to the top 10. But we are home to about 700 licensed and inspected dairy farms. So excited to, just celebrate them next month and continue to have Iowa be that great place for dairy to grow and thrive.
You said rank 11. I've been following Iowa production for quite a while, and I think we've been 12 for a very long time. So 11's a pretty good boost. Do you know that difference between 11 and 12, 11 and 10?
You know what? I don't off of the top of my head, but I'll have to look. I'm feeling optimistic though that we're really close.
You mentioned as well, June is Dairy Month. Are there any interesting events or topics you're going to be covering specifically during that time?
Yeah, so dairy farms across the state are hosting on-farm open houses all month long, and I'm really excited to support them. We have some great dairy farms that are willing to open their doors and open their farm to the public and help them understand where their milk comes from. So definitely keep a lookout for across social media for open houses. There's one happening in Western Iowa hosted by the Western Iowa Dairy Alliance at Skyline Dairy. That's going to be an awesome event. I know there's a couple others in Northeast Iowa. And it's just, yes, it's a great time, and dairy farmers do such a good job, like I said, of opening their barn doors and really taking the lead, not only to promote dairy, but actually promote agriculture across the board, because it takes all commodities to make dairy successful. So excited to watch farmers connect consumers to agriculture.
In that connection of consumers to agriculture, what do you think is kind of one of the biggest barriers between farmers and the average urban milk drinker or cheese eater?
Yeah, so I think as consumers become further and further removed from the farm, they're just not as up to date and current on what modern dairy farming practices are. And so I think that just alone, just the shift in people not growing up on a dairy or even having grandparents or aunts or uncles on a dairy farm anymore kind of causes a like you said, barrier, or just not having that go-to source. So as farmers become more tech savvy, we've seen some dairy farmers really take advantage of different ways to connect with consumers through social media. We have some really great farmers that are on TikTok and do a fabulous job of not only interacting with consumers and answering their questions, but representing all dairy farms, because at the end of the day, dairy farmers care for their cows, their land, and their communities. And just being able to showcase that to consumers widespread has been really great for dairy.
It's funny you mentioned some producers on TikTok, because I think I know who you're talking about. I think they went viral a couple years ago, and I was particularly interested because it was going around. It was like, farmers are feeding Skittles to cows, and everyone was losing their minds over this. And he's like, listen, if you grind it up and spread it out, it's like really not a big deal. And cows need sugar to produce milk.
Yeah. Yes. It's just such a great platform to be able to address those questions and like help bridge the gap, because yes, consumers might hear something scary, but these farmers do such a good job of breaking it down and saying like, hey, this is what actually happens. And then even just in conversations with them, they say like if there's a topic or something that they can't address, or even like people having concerns about them, they've built this following of consumers that will go bat for them and be able to tell their story too. Like, hey, I saw that on this farm, they're doing that, and you don't have to worry about that because they really care. And like, that just is such, like I said, such a good look for dairy farmers. And they're just really, really embracing new ways and innovative ways to connect with consumers.
Mariah Busta, Executive Director of the Iowa State Dairy Association, with us right now. In terms of policy, I know right now we're talking about kids and milk. What are some of the procedures going on and the next steps for the Whole Milk for Healthy Kids Act?
Yeah, so the Whole Milk for Healthy Kids Act is a bill that would modify current restrictions that would allow schools to offer whole and reduced fat flavored milks and unflavored milk. And that would be a really great opportunity to get milk, or more options and variety of milk in schools for kids to have access to. And so dairy farmers are feeling really optimistic about the bill or about the act this time. We really feel like we know that there's really strong support in the House as it passed the last time overwhelmingly, and it's a bipartisan bill. So just really feeling optimistic about getting it over the finish line this time and being able to offer more options to kids in schools.
In terms of other policy that we've experienced over the last couple of years, I know there was a period of time where Iowa dairy farmers were struggling with not having enough places for their milk and dairy products to go. Have we seen some relief for our farmers here over the last year or two?
Yeah, we've definitely seen relief, which is great. And I think, demand continues to be high for dairy, and exports also too play a big role in demand for that as well. So we know that 1 in 6 tanker loads of milk is being exported. So creating demand beyond the United States is huge for us. Also too, dialing back and talking about dairy demand here in domestically, we know that protein is having a moment right now, and dairy is truly delivering on that. We're excited that the products that dairy can offer, like Greek yogurt, protein powders, different beverages like that, even just fluid milk, has all been meeting consumer demand for increased protein in their diets. And so we're really excited to see this year fluid milk sales have actually seen an uptick in the first time in a while. So it's just really exciting to see that growth and that demand from consumers who are truly looking for a product that meets all of their needs.
Mariah Busta, Executive Director of the Iowa State Dairy Association, joining us. Before we let you go, we know June is Dairy Month, as you mentioned earlier in our conversation, and I wanted to just give another opportunity to tell us about the events going on and ways to get involved and ways to find out more.
Yeah, absolutely. So definitely embrace June Dairy Month as an opportunity to celebrate dairy farmers, and if that's an excuse to go out for ice cream or something, definitely use that a time or two. I know I personally do that. Oh, hey, it's June. I better go get some ice cream. But definitely keep an eye out for dairy farm open houses happening across the state. You can find them a lot on social media. They're very good about promoting it that way. Otherwise, like I said, continue to support dairy by purchasing dairy products at your local grocery stores or creameries. We have some awesome creameries across the state that produce really, really good products. So definitely take advantage of that. And also use this as an opportunity to find a dairy farmer and connect with them on social media and learn more about their story.
Mariah, thank you so much for joining us on Farm Here Daily. Glad to have you here as usual.
Awesome. Thanks for having me today.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us on Farm Here Daily, a field forward podcast. Again, in order to keep producing this type of local Iowa content, we would love to have you join our community. Please follow the podcast as well as our social media channels at Field Forward Pod. Additionally, you can find me on social media at Geiger Reports as well as TV, WHO TV Channel 13 every day in their morning and noon hour programs. Again, I am your host, David Geiger. I'll be back again tomorrow, everybody.